Okay, so we're going to be solving some examples related to factoring a quadratic equation with no coefficient. So we're going to be looking at examples with the following equation. So x squared plus a plus b into x plus ab. And our goal is to factor them out into two binomials. So x plus a times x plus b. So let's look at the first example. So we have a squared minus 7a plus 10. So remember that our goal is to look for a product of a and b that gives us 10 and a summation of a plus b, a summation of a plus b exactly that gives us minus 7. So let's say we do this. So 10, which is equal to ab. There are two options here. It could be 10 times 1, or it could be 2 times 5, gives us 10, right? So now let's say we look at 7, so it's a plus b. So we know that it could be either this one or this one, right? But if we know 10 plus 1 is not 10 plus 1 is not 7, but 2 plus 5 is 7. So 2 plus 5, right? But you have to be careful here because they're asking for minus 7, okay? So you have to keep your conventions in mind all the time. So let's look at them quickly. So if you do two positives multiplied by each other, that gives you a positive. Two negatives multiplied by each other also gives you a positive. And then a negative times a positive gives you a negative. So in this case, you have a positive 10, right? So you know that it could be this option or this option. But if you add plus 2 and plus 5, it gives you positive 7. You want negative 7. That means that negative 7 has to be minus 2 plus minus 5. So two negative numbers gives you negative 7, right? So it's not 10 plus 1. So therefore, your A is equal to negative 2 and B is equal to negative 5. Now remember the format that we're trying to get everything into, which is this guy here. So how do you factor this? Well, it's going to be is equal to x plus A, x plus B. In this case, A is negative 2 and b is negative 5. There you go. That's factored. And remember, at any time, you can pause and try to solve it yourself and then look at the solution. So let's go to the second example. We have m squared plus 8m minus 33. Again, the product of 33 and the summation should give you 8. So let's look at 33. What are our options? You do 33 times 1. You can do 3 times 11. And you know, when you're doing this, once you find that you have found something that makes sense, you don't have to keep going. So in this case, you know 33 and 1 is not going to give you 8, but you know that 11 minus 3 is going to give you 8. So 11 minus 3 gives you 8. Now look at your sign conventions again. Well, you can think to yourself, oh, I have a negative here. Does that make sense? Why do I have a negative? So look back here. It's negative 33 is what we want, right? And remember our sign conventions from here. So if we want a negative product, then you have to have, see here, a negative product, you have to have two opposite negatives and positives. So you can't have two sign conventions. You have to have two opposite sign conventions. So does it make sense that 11 is positive and that 3 is negative? Yeah, it does. Because you know that 11 times negative 3 is going to give you negative 33. Right? And 11 minus 3 is going to give you an 8. So let's go back. So it's going to be m. So in this case, your A is going to be 11. And your b is going to be negative 3. So m plus 11 into m minus 3. Now, here's the third example. X squared plus 4x minus 32. Again, look at your sign convention, right? This a negative product and a positive summation. So what is going to give us 32? Well, there's a bunch of options. 8 times 4, 16 times 2, 32 times 1. Again, but we're also trying to get a summation of 4, right? So you know that this is not going to give you 4, this is not going to give you 4, but 8 minus 4 is going to give you 4. Does that make sense? That I have a positive 8 and a negative 4? Yes. Why? Because you have a negative 32, which means that you have to have opposite sign conventions when they multiply. So you need to have a positive times a negative to give you a negative. So if you do positive 8 times negative 4, it's going to give you negative 32, right? And that's exactly what we're looking for, a negative 32. And 8 minus 4 is 4, that's positive 4, and that's also what we're looking for. Therefore, your A is equal to 8, and your B is equal to minus 4. So x, so when you're factoring this out, x plus 8 times x minus 4. There you go. So let's look at the fourth example. So let's do a perfect square example. X squared minus 24x plus 144. So in this case, it's a perfect square. I know this right away by looking at it. So a perfect square means that a and b are both the same. So in this case, if you think of 12 right away, you know 12 squared is 144, and 12 plus 12, sorry, let me clarify that. 12 plus 12 is equal to 24. So look at that, a and b are exactly the same. Now look at your sign conventions. It's a negative 24 and a positive. Remember, in order to get a product that's positive, you have to multiply by either two positive numbers or two negative numbers. In this case, it's negative 24, so it has to be negative 12 plus negative 12 gives you negative 24. And you know that negative 12 times negative 12 is positive 144. And remember that now that we know that a is equal to b, you don't have to do x plus a times x plus b. You can just do x plus b squared. So basically, how do you factor that? It's x plus b squared. And remember, we already realized that b has to be negative. So x minus 12 squared. There you go.